Hello and welcome to the launch party of the Instructional Story Design Experience. My name is Rance Green. I am the author of this book right here called Instructional Story Design. And this course was inspired by this book to help you take the practical steps of doing instructional story design and ending up with a capstone project at the end. So I'm very excited to have all of you. Let's get started. I'd like to start actually with a short poll. One of the goals of the School of Story Design, well, the goal, I say, the mission is to humanize the learning experience. And so when you think of that word, humanized instruction, I'd like for you to think of a word or a phrase that comes to mind when you hear that. Okay, we've got personal. Humanized instruction is personal. It's interactive. It involves community, collaboration. Humanized instruction meets learners where they are. It changes hearts. Interesting. There's a
It wouldn't let me put the whole thing. It's hearts, minds, and behaviors.
changes hearts, minds, and behaviors. Thank you, Kat.
Yeah.
And connection is a big word here. Connectedness. Good. So just take a look at this word cloud for a moment and think about your own instruction, the instruction that you create, or the instruction that you've taken. I believe that you are probably already doing some things to humanize your own instruction. And so I'd like to do a short breakout group here where you introduce your name to the group, and then one thing that you're doing that you're proud of to humanize the learning experience. And we'll just do like a 5-minute breakout, a quick round robin discussion of what you're doing now to humanize instruction. And that could be something that you do prior to instruction, something that you do in the actual course, or something that you do after training to make that experience a humanized one. Welcome back to the main room. I hope that you enjoyed getting to know each other a little bit and sharing some humanizing ideas. I'd like to hear just a debrief. What is an idea that you heard in the breakout room that you're like, huh, that's a really good idea for humanizing training?
I like that Michelle talking about using reflection. So that
Mhm.
is because we do a lot of online training here at DAU, and that is one of the challenge for us that how can we make it personalized? How can we make it connect to the user? And I think reflection is one of the good simple way that we can add to it.
Boy, I would agree with that, Nan. And the part of the instructional story design model includes, a piece of reflection. So, Michelle, you're going to feel right at home. Anybody else heard something in the breakout room that you're like, ooh, I like that?
So Heidi mentioned about connecting to the students before they get into class, understanding them and learning about their learning, styles and all that, before they ever get in there. So I thought that, I mean, we hear that, we know that, but do we always take the time because we're so busy to actually execute that, that opportunity? And so,
Right.
that was a great one.
That's a good point, Is it Audra?
Audra, yep.
Audra, yes. So that's a great point. And, knowing who your learning audience is part also of the instructional story design process. So You'll be getting to know, the learning audience that you're going to be creating training for in this course. That's great, Heidi, that you're actually doing face-to-faces with those learners. That's for a lot of people, that's a luxury. We don't have, access to learners all the time. Yes, Michelle.
That's David was talking about that, how he actually uses the language. Like if he said if he has an architect, he tries to bring it from that perspective, or if they're in another profession, he tries to use that language to provide the educational piece of it. I thought that was really cool.
Oh, that's
Yeah, but I
excellent.
don't know that that works because like I said that going, I like to come from where the student comes from. So say I was using the example, they're learning tap dancing, but they are a musician. So I will try and talk in music notation and crotchets and quavers and minims and, half notes and all this stuff because they can access that to access the knowledge. But then if they're doing it online and I don't know them, that's different. If I knew them and knew I had a cohort of music students learning acting or English, I might shift it. But how do you guys in your realm, when you're writing courses for people you don't know, you can't say, I'm going to bring in analogies from dog care and make that about patient care. Actually, you probably could, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what are some ways that you get to know your audience in this group? How do you learn who your audience is when you're creating learning for them? Yes, Michelle.
Well, that's during the analysis piece of it, right? Trying to find out all the background. And I know for some of the stuff that you've provided is even digs deeper into the real personal side, which I think sometimes can be a challenge because we don't have maybe direct access to the true learners because we're dealing with the SMEs and everybody up here, and we're trying to get that feedback through them. So that can be a challenge. But
Yeah,
yeah, finding out the true learner.
yeah.
How do you
Go ahead, David.
I'm sorry, I'm the mouthy Australian. I mean my query is how do you deal with writing stuff that you know nothing about? So someone said to me, you've got to write something about astrophysics. And I meet the expert, that's okay, but I have no effing idea what this is about, and I still have to write it.
Lots of research. I come from technical writing where I didn't know most of my subjects. So meeting with the subject matter experts and just letting them talk, picking their brain. Now, with phones, supercomputers in our pockets, you can research almost anything. AI, sometimes I can dump a bunch in there and let it distill for me and synthesize, give me highlights, at least as a jumping off point to ask good questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the people who know how to do things, your subject matter experts, are not learning experts or training people. And so it's your role to come together with that subject matter expert and make what they know actionable for your learning audience. So that's you don't have to be a subject matter expert to train on something. You just have to be very good at developing relationships with subject matter experts and extracting that um, the training. Yes, Michelle.
I think too that key piece is sometimes when we're not an expert at it or really don't have that background, it's better because we go through and we ask questions. Well, how do you do that? Why is it done that way? Right? As
Right.
opposed to I have the knowledge in my head and I'm putting it out. So
Yeah. Subject matter experts have what we all have. They have the curse of knowledge. They can't imagine not knowing it. They can't imagine what it's like to not know what they know. And so it becomes very difficult to train somebody who doesn't know anything about it because there are these assumptions that the learner already knows things that are in their head that they aren't conscious of. And so when you are questioning subject matter experts, like Michelle is talking about, um, subject matter experts don't know their own processes. They just don't usually. And so that's your gift to them to help them uncover that process to make it trainable for other people to do. Right, guys? Subject matter experts know everything about it, but they couldn't explain the process in many cases.
I think maybe because it's a lot. It's a lot of things that they want the learner to know. So as the ISD, that's why we always asking the SME that what is the goal that you want to accomplish, and that is the
Yes.
way that we guide them along the way. And Ranch, you're gonna see a few of the SME joining us in the cohorts as well
Oh,
here.
wonderful.
So we would have the SME, and I would like them to work closely with the ISD. So we would pair them up in the
Okay.
workshop as well.
So my
Yeah.
apologies to all the SMEs on the call, but that isn't an insult at all.
No insult. I'm the SME, but it's true. It is true because trying to convey, I know what I know, but trying to convey what that means to somebody who has no clue to
Mhm.
be able to not just understand, but actually execute and apply
Excellent.
is are two totally different worlds. And in the last
Mhm.
10 years, I have learned that over and over, and so, but yeah, it is true.
Yes. So SMEs, we're SMEs, really. I mean, we're SMEs in learning, right? So the subject matter experts in other fields live and breathe it. And so everything may seem important, but everything is not important for somebody to be able to do. And I like what you said, Nan, about focusing on the outcome. And you'll learn a lot about that in the instructional story design course about what is the business outcome? What do what do you want to happen in the business? Um, what's the root problem from keeping that from happening? And then, following that up with, okay, well, what's the best solution for this? It might just be, oh, here's a piece of paper that has all the steps listed, post it on their computer, and they're good to go, Or they might need training to help them do those things. All right. Thank you. There is an instructional story design roundtable that is focused and we're going to build a metaphor together. And here is the link. It's a free event. I do this twice a year. Um, the focus is different every time, and this one just happens to be on metaphor. So David brought up, how do you speak the language of the person using something that's familiar to them to explain something that is unfamiliar to them. So great. Okay, well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy getting to know each other a little bit. Thank you also for sharing a little bit about yourselves. And I'd like to give a quick overview of your answers. Okay, so there's a pretty wide range of experience in instructional design in this course. There's who have 10 plus years experience, some who have 0 to 1 years. The medium amount of experience is 3 to 5. So if you are new to instructional design, and there are a few of you, this course will not leave you behind. And if you feel like it is leaving you behind, you can all reach me either through the Discuss tab, or you can, and I'll show you where that is in the course, or you can email me and say, hey, I'm not getting this. Can you help me? But we've had many new to instructional design people go through this course and absolutely shine. So I'm excited to have such a wide range here. Um, Almost all of you develop courses using e-learning, and almost all of you develop courses using doing live training, in-person training. Some of you do virtual. Some of you also do a blend of different types of learning. In one of the breakout groups, you were talking about authoring tools. So Articulate Storyline, Articulate Rise. You're using some of these tools to create e-learning. Some of you are using, a lot of you are using PowerPoint. So likely, those live sessions that you're doing, you're creating whatever visual support you need in the PowerPoint. And many of you are using animation. I know that some of you have gone through the Beyond Story Production course, and that's what brought you over to this course. I do have a certification track for Beyond Animation where you can learn how to create really cool stories. So it's nice to see that a lot of you are using animation. When I asked you, what's some of the barriers, lack of process or lack of confidence was number one and number two, which makes sense. That's why you're joining this course, so that you can learn the process and gain that confidence. Some of you had no barriers whatsoever, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. Quite a few of you. I asked you what you liked about instructional design, and this is what one of you said. Let's take a listen or take a read. I agree. I think people can tell the difference of a well-designed course. Nice. And I think that's something that we all love, helping people achieve their goals. We're a very warm and um, driven bunch when it comes to helping people succeed. So thank you for whoever shared that. And then also I asked you what you were hoping for in this course. And one of you said, I hope that instructional story design will further develop and expand my skills as an instructional designer. And I'm really happy to hear this because many of the people who come through this course, even without the storytelling aspect, um, at the end of the course are like, oh my gosh, I've been missing some things in just my instructional design methodology. So this course has helped me to hone those skills as well as my storytelling skills. So I'm excited for you to, and it'll feel like at the very beginning, like, wow, this is totally instructional design. This is like from the beginning, my first conversation with the stakeholder, with the subject matter expert, and honing those interview skills and humanizing them is going to make you a better instructional designer. And then I want to integrate and bring to life real scenarios that learners can relate to back at the job. So the skills that you'll learn in this course will help you to make case studies even stronger. But it won't just be case studies. In fact, the story that you will build for this course will be a hypothetical or fictional story based in reality. I asked you if you had read instructional story design. Most of you have not. And that is not a problem. You will not be left behind because you didn't read the book. The book contains all the steps that we're going to be going through here, and in some cases goes into more depth because we have, limited time in the course, and you need to get your hands on it and start doing it. But we intentionally designed this course um, to include types of training that are not included in the book. So when you read the book, you'll see all different kinds of training that are not represented, um, that are not in this course. So we wanted to make it a complement, also make it a reference to you for when you um, are done with this course, you can come back to the book. There's a whole chapter in there of case studies of people who are using stories in their training, different companies, um, and a lot of great stuff in the book that, of course, we just don't have time for in the experience. So yeah, so get it. If many of you are going on to stage 2 of the instructional story design certification process, this course is step 1. It will give you practice using the process. Step 2 is building an actual course, either for your portfolio or for work. And I walk with you through each of those steps and mentor you through it. It's fun. We have a lot of people who have gone through this and this certification, and ooh, it just taking that next step just solidifies it. So yeah, thank you for letting me get to know you a little bit. Um, I'd like to introduce you to instructional story design and give you kind of a big picture view before you start getting into the course, so you kind of see where you're heading. And to do that, I'd like to start with a story. As you watch this video unfold, I'd like for you to put yourself in the shoes of the learner and think back to our word cloud of humanized instruction and how this learning experience compares to that word cloud that we created together. And as you watch this story unfold, you can use the chat. Ask yourself, how do I feel right now? And why do I feel that way? So you might put in the chat something like, I feel respected because the facilitator is including me in this. Put an emotion and then why you feel that way. All right.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the call. It's 5 after the hour, so everyone should be here now. I'm Cindy, and I'll be your facilitator for today's session. Let's get started. Here's our learning objectives for today's session. Oh, let me turn off my video so I'm not distracting and share my screen. There we go. Okay, so as I was saying, here's the learning objectives for today's session. Let me go through them one by one, then I'll see if you have any questions. Any questions before we get started? You can type them in the chat. All right, let's get started. So before we go on, any questions about our objectives today? All right, let's move on to our first point. Any questions about the first point? Use the chat to type your questions. I'll take it that you're with me 100%. Let's move on to the next point. This is a really important one. There's a lot of information to get through. No, Bitsy, down. No, Bitsy, down. Down. Good girl. Sorry, that was Bitsy. She's a Rottweiler. I just got her. You know. Sorry. Like I said, there's a lot of information on this one. Really important stuff. So stay with me. I hope you got all of that. I know it's a lot to take in. Let me know if you need me to stop and explain anything, especially on this point. Anybody? Use the chat. Anybody? Okay. No responses. That's okay. Remember, you can use the chat to ask questions. We love questions. I like this next slide. It's great for visual learners. Now, you might not be able to read the smaller fonts, but I'll explain. Look at the 2nd and 8th bars from the left. Notice the relationship between how these 2 bars on the left. Graphs are so great for learning. Any questions? Silence is golden. Now, this next slide is a little more interactive. How many of you know what this is? Anyone? It's the Grand Canyon. Has anyone ever been to the Grand Canyon? Oh, wow, nobody. I went once when I was a girl. I don't remember it that much, but the pictures, oh, really amazing. Now, you might be wondering what the Grand Canyon has to do with our topic today. Well, not very much, but I thought it'd be a nice break from the content. I'll just keep the photo up while we go over this next point. Okay, that was a lot of content. Any questions? Any questions? Let me stop for questions. Anyone? Anybody have a question? You've been a great class. I've loved this. Thank you so much for your attention. I have one last question for you. What's one thing you're going to take away from today's session? Just type your answer in the chat. Anyone? Oh, we have someone who's been to the Grand Canyon. Fantastic. We'll have to talk about that offline. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. We'll see you next week for the second session. Bye-bye now.
Right. Thank you, Cindy, for that wonderful learning experience. Why don't we take a moment to answer those two questions. How did you feel during this learning experience, and why did you feel that way?
I felt very stressed. That training put all the cognitive load on me to follow, to track. Yeah, it was stressful.
Stressful, okay, because you felt like you had to do all the thinking and, it was just like an information dump. Yes, Michelle.
For me, it was tough because she's given the information that says any questions, and then she goes right back. And for people who process and over process, so it did also stress me out too. And it was just, even though she made the one attempt also to make it personal with the Grand Canyon question, it didn't apply to help me do my job.
Right, right. Good, Michelle. Heidi says, I felt bored. Not much engagement from the learners to take time with each point. Karen feels frustrated, was wondering if her students even had chat. Was that function even working? Good. Anybody else? Yes, David.
I thought it wasn't interactive. So the problem was I don't think the learner was accountable. So there was no sort of reason to be checking in. You could be looking at your Facebook while this is going on, and also no tools to make them remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great points. Yeah. So no accountability. Like, I feel like I could just check out here. I don't really need to listen to what this person is saying. Good.
The questions were all close-ended. They were just yes, nos. Instead of does anyone have any questions? It was, what questions do you have? Would have at least made some people pay attention or, feel guilty that they weren't and pipe in with a question. There was no expectation of answering,
Right.
truly.
The experience, to your point, Kat, was not designed for discussion. It was designed for her to present something and for them to listen. Yeah. Good.
Well, it was top down. It was like going to a university lecture in the 80s where the science person would just talk up the front and you had to take notes. And if you couldn't access that way of learning, that was the end of you.
Yeah. Good point, David. Michelle says a briefing, not learning. Good, good.
I felt like it was like fire hose. It's just a bunch of information coming at you. But also, it almost, even though she was asking questions, it was almost like, because we got to get through this point so we can move on. It was just, we're on a track and we need to just keep going. It wasn't conducive to feel, I don't know what you would call it, inviting to ask a question, or like the environment was conducive to being able to ask questions. So.
Good point, Audra. Yeah, this freight train is not stopping. We are
Right.
getting through this content no matter what.
I will briefly start. I did not feel addressed as a person. I don't know if I tell this correctly, as I'm not a native speaker, but I wasn't being addressed as a person. And why? Yes, of course, because she did not use the camera. Everything was confusing. It was much too quick, and of course, we all know that too much text on the slides. Yeah, it was just like participating in something, but not something personal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are many other reasons why I didn't feel like being addressed as a person, but I just probably obvious reasons, but I can't name them. It was just a feeling that, yeah,
Yeah,
I was there, but not there. I don't
nice.
know.
So you felt like you were there, but not there, and because she didn't address you as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you,
The
Janina.
only thing I would remember from that presentation are the dogs and the Grand Canyon, and those have nothing
Yeah.
to do with what she was trying to teach.
And apparently you have dogs, Elizabeth.
Yeah, if you heard them barking, sorry.
I didn't.
Okay.
No. Yeah, so you remember, so you felt, so how'd that make you feel then?
I
If that's all
mean,
you remember.
frankly, I would have been on my phone the entire time.
Yeah, so maybe you felt checked out.
Yeah, read the notes.
Right.
I mean, I feel like the way she valued the information was not valued at all. And because of that, the learner is not valuing the information. Like she just sort of treated it as an afterthought.
Okay, good.
I feel like too, I agree with everything that was said. And then there was a weird feeling when she had like the graph and said, "Oh, graphs are great to learn," but it was like super small or something where there's this total disconnect, and you're like, "Oh, this is your chance," or the Grand Canyon, right? Oh, okay. Oh no, it had nothing to do with anything. Got it, got it. You know, it was just kind of like you the moments I wanted to connect, I was like, nope, you tried, but not hard enough. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then just like the pace, obviously, I'm sure it was, like the idea of it was sped up, but we've all been through that training where people, do you have any questions? And they don't allow space to think.
Mhm.
And I would have been that person at the end who's like, "Oh, I've been to the Grand Canyon." Like I was finally able to get that out or something, because you're just
Right.
like, I need to be able to think if I had questions. So I think everything would have been a question in that training.
Yeah, yeah. So Jen, I like the way you put that. Like you were looking for opportunities to be like trying to give this person a chance to really draw you in, but never, it was like on the edge, but never quite. So kind
Yeah.
of feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah.
Nan, you wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a passive learning again. And I have to say that some students might like that. Just like David said, they can check out, they can do other things and not even have to pay attention. And and Kat bring a good point that maybe the question is not the right question that bring them to feel like they connected to the content.
Yeah.
And yeah, another thing is maybe you can come to some of the class and the student are more shy than other. And maybe I'm just thinking as what you just did earlier, that you bring them into the breakout section and they can kind of
Mhm.
like make them talk more. I think that's
Those are good
it.
suggestions, Nan. Anybody else have a suggestion for Cindy that would help her when she does this next week? What might help humanize this learning experience for her students?
Asking the students if they've had an issue or how did they apply some of those key points, whatever they were,
Mhm. Nice.
or giving
That's
examples of it.
yeah.
Just like you did, Rance, put them into breakout groups to talk about
Mm,
an issue or a problem or an experience from their own experience and share, and then maybe report back to the main group.
yeah.
Ways to get engaged. Yeah.
And Heidi says maybe sprinkle in checks for understanding during and after each point. Maybe have some discussion about it. Karen says, I'd recommend she have an icebreaker or something to get the class interacting. And using Menti, like we've been doing today. Good.
She should be more present, at least when she asks, does anyone have a question? Maybe go to camera, not only for 1 second, but for a longer time, and maybe keep the camera on during the training, but not necessarily when she's not comfortable, but at least for the question rounds, and maybe also include some polls or so in between, just to include the audience better if they are not comfortable to speak up, for
You
example.
know, that is such a simple thing. I mean, if I were to cut my camera off and just talk to you like this, doesn't suddenly it feel a little less human?
Yeah.
Like you're talking, you see my picture talking. That's horrible. I've got to get my, okay, there. That's much better. I'm so glad that you are all also sharing your cameras because like we're in the same room, we're just chatting. It's like, that's the wonderful thing about virtual is like very, diplomatic. We're all on the same level. We've all got our little rectangle. So yeah, just turning on her camera and leaving it on doing the presentation would be a huge help. I work with sales teams, and you would not believe how many of them the first thing they do is share their PowerPoint and turn off their camera. I'm like, you're trying to connect with this client. You want them to buy from you, but they don't even know who you are. Yeah. So yeah, share the camera. Share the camera. Good.
Targeted questions. So instead of any questions, how do you feel about this?
Mhm.
Why do you think this change has happened? What indicators created this graph?
Yeah. 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 That would be great. I mean, it's as if she's asking a question that she doesn't expect anybody to respond to. But if they were targeted, like Elizabeth is saying, and Janina, you also mentioned this too, like a targeted question that demands an answer is going to get an answer eventually. Somebody will answer it. Yeah, great point, Elizabeth.
I would say too, when you're doing a virtual training like that, an instructor-led training, it's that connection and having people communicate in the beginning. So even if I've had a training where there's like too many people for everyone to introduce themselves, it's like I ask a question and put in the chat like an emoji or something that gets them all ready to respond. Because I feel like she didn't do that in the beginning, and so it would be harder to connect and respond throughout. And then also that idea of that might allow people to type in questions as she's talking, because I know I'll do that sometimes. And that way when there's the question and it's related to the content you're talking about, and hopefully it's not like the slide is filled with all the words, but then you can stop, right, and pause and bring that in. And like Elizabeth said, kind of that targeted where again, allowing for questions throughout, but then asking specific questions to gauge understanding of what you're talking about, right? Are there areas that you need to cover again or something like that?
Yeah, encouraging conversation, whether it's in the chat or in person or, just unmuting. So all of those things will help Cindy's session become a more humanized experience. Excellent. Kelly, let's try your audio.
Can you hear me? Let me start there.
Yes.
Okay. All right. It looked like she was just reading from the slide because watching her cursor or arrow,
Mm,
don't
mhm.
don't read from the slide. Well, one, yeah, definitely don't have that many words, but don't
No,
read, just talk to
right.
people. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the cardinal rule of, live presentations is you only use a slide if it really is needed to support what you're about to say. Otherwise, just leave it off because you can just talk and get the point across without the visuals. If you need a visual, of course, then use it. Excellent. Good. Those are all great ways to humanize the learning experience. I would like to show you kind of the instructional story design way using Cindy as an example, from beginning to end. So let's remember that, first of all, this course that Cindy is facilitating, well, not really facilitating, delivering to her audience, it didn't come from nowhere. Somewhere in the business, there was a need. Somewhere in the business, something was happening that needed to be either fixed, corrected, something new needed to be learned. And maybe this PowerPoint was created and handed to Cindy and said, hey, do it. You're the facilitator, you go for it, deliver this training. And she did the best she could. And, I mean, she had a pleasant voice. She was energetic enough, but all of that didn't equal a humanized experience. Like a personality can't carry a learning experience. So to help Cindy, I'd like to introduce you to first the story design model. You know what? I'm not going to use that slide because I've got these. And at the top is the story. And this is the story that we're creating for instruction. And at the bottom is the word action, because that's the action we want people to take as a result of training. And many times stories might be included in instructional design that aren't really related to the action, or they're a little off somehow. And that's because the things in the middle are missing, and we're going to fill in what's in the middle there. You're going to know this model by heart by the end of the course, so don't worry. You don't have to write this down. There are two elements of a story that must be present for training. So when you think about stories that you watch, see, read, tell, what are the basic elements that make a story a story?
Plot.
Plot, sure. It's got to have a plot. It's got to go somewhere.
I feel like, back to my elementary school, how to write a story, rising action, climax, falling action.
Sure, yeah. It has a flow to it.
Characters.
Characters, yes, it has characters. When you think about the plot, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, mostly there's also a kind of a problem or conflict or disagreement
Yes.
between the characters that needs to be solved or
Yes.
managed.
Yes, excellent. And you guys know stories. I mean, you talk in stories every day, right? You hear them all the time, you tell them all the time. This is how we communicate as humans, through stories. And if you pay attention to, um, just your language throughout the day, how many times you're talking in story terms, it's mind-blowing. This is how our brains, process information, explain information, and so forth. So you guys hit it on the head. There are two non-negotiables that must be present in a story for training. And it's these two things: relatable characters and strong conflict. And I use the word relatable here to describe characters because our learning audience has to have some empathy for these characters in our story. If there's no empathy, there's no, who cares what happens to them? And the conflict must be strong. And I use the word strong just to keep it in the forefront that, first of all, the conflict has to be there for it to be a story. And it needs to be as strong as reasonably possible. Because, us. We like to show people the primrose path. Everything goes great. This is exactly how you're supposed to do it. The idea of putting conflict in a story is hard sometimes. But you're going to see why it's so important to have that conflict there. And when you put those two things together, relatable characters and strong conflict, it makes you feel something inside. And what I call that is a desire for resolution. Right? You want to see these characters get out of whatever conflict they're in. And once the story for training has created a desire for resolution, the story has pretty much done its job. So you've brought that story up to the climax of the conflict. Boom, that's where you stop. But there's still this gap. Like we can't leave people hanging. They do need resolution. So where does that resolution come from? Of course, instruction. It comes from the instruction itself. So as they are solving problems based on this story, little by little, they're bringing resolution to the story. Each conflict that they've seen in the story is being resolved. And that's the model. So a story for training contains relatable characters and strong conflict, which produces a desire for resolution, which opens them up for instruction and motivates them to take action. That's it. That's the model. You're going to get a lot of experience with this model. Okay, now I'll go back to my slide. And I'll quiz you. So what are the two elements of a story that must be present in a story for training?
Relatable conflict. Wait, no.
Strong characters and relatable conflict.
Yes. Relatable characters and strong conflict.
Yes, yes. Excellent. And what does that produce inside of us when that happens?
Desire for resolution, if you can hear me. Okay.
That's right, Kelly. And then once that desire for resolution has been sparked, it opens us up for what?
Instruction.
Yes. You're already pros. That is what will connect our story concretely to the action that we want people to take. Stories are not fluff. Often they are, I will say, often they are fluff, but not in an instructional story design course. The story is the core of the instruction. And the story itself, as you will see, will open up amazing possibilities for activities that you can do afterward that will bring that resolution that the audience, your learning audience is looking for. All right, so I'd like to show you that process, how it plays out. It's 3 stages: discover, design, deliver. Discover is synonymous with analyze. And there are 2 things that must be, there's 2 artifacts that you're going to be creating in the discover stage. This one on the left, which is the audience profile, and this one on the right, which is the action list. And I'd like to look at both of these artifacts together. Now, there is a stage before this, a discovery stage before this, where you are interviewing stakeholders to find out if training really is the right solution, what the business outcome is going to be, and what the root problem is. So there is a step before this one, and you'll get practice with that as well in the course. But once you have determined what that business outcome is going to be, what the root problem is, and that training is a good solution or most likely part of the solution, back to Elizabeth's initial statement about change management, training is usually a part of the solution. It's rarely the whole solution. So once you have determined that, then the next part of the discover stage is creating these 2 artifacts. So let's look at each one of them individually. This is the audience profile. You've already told me, a couple of you have told me that you do create something of an audience profile before you design the training, which is awesome. Some of you use demographics. It's wonderful. Some questions that you're going to be answering in this course about your learning audience is, what do they value? What are their current circumstances? How are they reacting to those circumstances? What do they fear? What do they do in their spare time? And I often hesitate to ask this one. I ask these questions if I'm doing consulting work, if I'm doing a keynote speech, if I'm conducting training for a sales team or a marketing team or a group of instructional designers. I want to know the answers to these questions. And often the answer to what do they do in their spare time, the answer to that, first of all, reminds me, hey, these are people with lives outside of work. Secondly, sometimes that provides material that can end up in the story. So I always ask that question as well. And really, the answers to these questions answer the big question. How will training benefit them personally? The course you've designed, does it take into consideration their values? Will it speak to those values? Does it take into consideration their current circumstances? Does it diminish some of their fears? Are you speaking their language? Good. So that's the audience profile. You're going to get lots of practice using an audience profile. And this is the action list. You might call this a task list or learning objectives. I call it an action list. My team calls it an action list. I train my stakeholders to call it an action list because I want everybody to remember and have top of mind that we are training people to do things, to take action. Elizabeth, I think I need to know more about how to change benefits to my stakeholders personally. Yeah,
So much of what I do is very top down.
yeah,
And I think a lot of times I have missed the how does this help you part of my change
yes.
project.
Yes, you can ask those same questions as you prepare to meet with your stakeholders of them. Who are they? Who are your stakeholders? And that's taking that's being a consultant. And this course is going to spend a lot of time training you as a consultant, not just as a designer, but also as a consultant, because consultants build relationships and relationships happen at the personal level. So when you ask personal questions, when you get to know your stakeholders personally, that relationship strengthens. And suddenly you're not just, taking orders anymore. You're the person that they come to consult with. Thanks for bringing that up, Elizabeth. Okay, let's talk about the action list. When you ask your subject matter experts, hey, what did people need to do as a result of training? They're going to give you answers like this, probably, and this, and this. Jen, that one's for you. But there's something inherently missing in all of these things. What is it? What's missing?
Action.
Yeah, action. Like there's no action for the learner to take on any of these actions. So when you go back to the stakeholder, you can help them by asking them, okay, what does someone who is is aware of the customer first policy actually do? Can you tell me a little story about that? When would they encounter this opportunity to have a customer first mindset? And drill down to observable actions. Oh, well, they might say hello to them when they see them. Okay, that's an observable action. What would they do next? Well, they would walk over to ask them, if they could help them with anything. All right, that's another observable action. So drill down to observable actions. Of course, start with strong verbs, action verbs, not passive verbs. Put the actions in a logical order, and then ask the subject matter expert, hey, Here's the list. Is this what you want me to train people to do? And they can sign off on it, or they can often they'll be like, oh, yeah, that is what we're asking people to do. They don't know. Often they don't know their own process or what they're asking people to do. You'll find that particularly in Jen, you'll find that particularly true in compliance. They're like, oh, they just need to know this information. Right. They need to know this so that they can do what? Then they're talking in actions. Well, they need to know it so they can, you know, report if they suspect a phishing email, whatever. How are they going to know to report it? Well, they've got to be able to, well, then there's some knowledge, right, to back up. Well, they need to recognize certain things in order to do that. But you start with the action. Good. I've had many subject matter experts come back later and thank me for getting their their act together. Okay, so this is an action list. Do you have any questions about creating an audience profile or an action list?
I don't have a question. I just want to say I'm really excited to try to put this to use, or not try to put this to use for some compliance trainings that I'm working on. There's some that are death by PowerPoint, and I'm really excited at the idea of doing this so people actually know what they're supposed to know, and hopefully enjoy it as much as maybe compliance training can be enjoyed.
Absolutely. I think that compliance training is ripe for storytelling. It totally is ripe for storytelling. Um, yeah. And so, yeah, making sure that your learning audience knows what they need to do. What do you need to do? Right? Knowing something is not enough. You got to be able to do something with that knowledge. Good.
I have a question.
Yes.
Y- so you mentioned you listed all these different things for the audience profile. Like, what do they value? Like, do you ask that question just bluntly as you laid it on the slide, or is it more of you just figure it out through organic conversations, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it organically, but I typically will just ask outright. And
Okay, cool.
I'll send those questions to somebody who knows that audience because I usually don't know the audience. I'll ask the managers. Um, once I was training the board of several times I've trained boards of directors, and those people were inaccessible, right? I mean, a lot of them were famous people. Like, you're not just going to call them up. So I had to find somebody, and so I finally found somebody in legal who knew the people, and then I Googled them, and I just found out a bunch about them that I could design something that was appropriate for them.
Okay.
You can always find it out. Even if you get a huge audience, like 5,000 people that you're training, 25,000, there's still something about a group um, that you can find some commonalities with, especially their current circumstances and their reactions to those circumstances. You can find something. Maybe they're going through a reorg. How are they feeling about that? Whatever that kind of group thing is. And then you're going to create, well, let me not get ahead of myself. Let me go back. Good. Okay, good question. So, where do we get relatable characters and strong conflict? Well, we're not going to just create characters out of thin air. Now we've done our research, we've done our analysis, we know who our audience is, and we can create characters that are relatable to them. So that your learning audience says, I get that person. Yeah, I understand. I understand that person. That person's a lot like me. In some way, they are relatable to that audience. Secondly, strong conflict. Where does that come from? We're going to put our characters into strong conflict with the action list, plain and simple. We're going to see them doing a lot of wrong things in this story, and they're going to be directly related to the action list. And now you've got this custom story for training. And that is going to produce a desire for resolution, which of course, instruction will bring resolution to. So your biggest temptation probably is going to be creating a story with no conflict in it. So you gotta let that go. Get that conflict in there. All right, so Cindy's gonna do this. She's gonna find out. She goes back to her subject matter expert and says, "Hey, who am I actually training here?" And she finds out that this information about her learning audience. As you read through this, can you picture in your head a character for this story? Now that you have this information about who your audience is, could you select and kind of create a character that this audience would be like, oh yeah, I get that person. A lot easier now, right? You're not starting from scratch. You know who your learning audience is. But this isn't all she does. Once she has an audience profile, she moves on to the action list and goes to the subject matter expert and says, okay, what does a person who is aware of the customer first policy actually do? Okay. Smile, ask, walk, engage, say. Are these observable actions? Yeah, you can watch people doing them. You can hear people saying it. These are observable actions, which makes them trainable. Now I can train people to do these things. So Cindy does this. She goes into the design phase now. She creates a cast of characters. She puts them in conflict with the action lists. And we get to see the impact on the customer as a result. So, would you like to see her new and improved course? Of course you
Yes.
do. Do you know why? Because you have a desire for resolution. That's why. Just saying. All right, let's see her second session here and ask yourself the same questions. You can type your answers in the chat as you watch if you'd like to. But how do I feel? Why do I feel that way? Let's begin.
Hi, everyone. It's the top of the hour. Welcome to today's session. I'm Cindy. I'll be facilitating this conversation today. I want to thank you for completing the survey I sent out prior to this session. Looks like most of you have been here for 2 years or more and are attending today's session to brush up on your skills. That's great because we'll be using the chat extensively and we'll need your expertise during the session. About 30% of you are brand new to our store. Welcome. These online classes will get you started on the right foot. Take the worksheet I sent yesterday and have it ready. I'd like to start with a story. Afterwards, I'll ask you a few questions. Just a moment while I get the video up, and here we go. Think about what just happened in that story. Is there anything that seemed out of place to you? Type your answer in the chat. Okay, yes. The floor rep is on her phone, not listening to the customer. They seem uninterested in helping the customer. Good point. Can you expound on that? What are the floor reps doing that makes them seem uninterested in helping the customer? Great. Yes, they aren't really engaging in conversation. They're walking away from the customer before she's done talking. These are great observations. Okay, let's talk about some ways these employees could behave differently. What are your suggestions?
How did you feel? Why did you feel that way?
She was looking directly in the camera when she was talking. She did not do that before. So I felt now more personally addressed than before. Also due to the survey she mentioned in the beginning, she showed that there are people who have lots of experience and others who are new to the company, and that was good in my opinion, because in that way she created a kind of individual space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great, Janina. I love that you're homing in on the personal part. That's
Yeah,
great.
I know. Yeah.
I think her questions were targeted as well.
Mm,
Like total 180 from that.
yeah. And she could ask targeted questions because there was something to ask about. What was she asking about? The story. Take the story out and what's that session look like, Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say that she also then was able to get deeper into the actions, right? Because at first the responses were like, oh, just rude. Okay, well, what does rude look like? And that gets us
Yeah.
to probably what we would talk about next.
Right, right. We didn't get to see her take the conversation further, but yes, exactly. Now she has some place to start, somewhere to work from. Good. Kelly, test your audio.
You're working?
Yeah.
So, I felt engaged, energized, actually, felt like she knew me even before the class began because she reached out with the survey, gave me a worksheet. So I was engaged through that going in. Yeah, the open-ended questions. And then it continued. Well, how do you suggest to fix that? Or
Yeah,
why do you, yeah. So it was fun. It was fun, actually.
yeah.
Uh, not boring.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so kind of a 180. It like matches that word cloud that we made at the very beginning of this humanized experience. And really, it's the story that made that possible. So I'd like to share with you what she did to make this so engaging. She told a story. That story had relatable characters and strong conflict. She asked a reflect question. You know, what did you observe from this story? Just no right or wrong answer. Just, hey, what did you see? She asked a solve question at the very end there. What could these people do differently? And we didn't get to see this either, but after they had answered, then she would have given feedback. But you even saw her giving feedback over here on these reflect questions as well. Because as people were putting in the chat, she was saying back to them and like asking them to go a little bit deeper. Good. So we saw this story. We saw reflect, we saw solve, we saw feedback. Those are the 4 stages of instructional story design for the learner experience that you're going to be creating. You're going to create a story. You're going to give feedback. I'm sorry, you're going to ask a reflect question. You're going to ask feedback. I keep saying feedback. Solve questions. And those solve questions are going to have meaningful feedback. And you'll learn this process, especially when you get into chapter 7, I believe. 8 on training with the story. All right. What if this was an e-learning experience? Right? It's easy to guide a conversation in person, but what if this was an e-learning experience? Well, she could start with the same video, right? You notice there's no learning objectives here. Her context at the beginning was basically, here's who you are, and here's what you can expect. We're going to be chatting a lot with each other during this experience. So she set some context. Then she shared the story. So in this case, in the e-learning course, there might need to be some context at the beginning, but generally it's going to start with the story. Then in the e-learning course, how do you think the customer feels? And they can answer, ignored and unimportant, and they can submit that, and boom, that gets inserted as a variable on the next slide. You said the customer could feel ignored and unimportant. Why do you think she felt that way? They can type in an answer there. That answer then gets inserted as a variable on the next slide. What might they have done differently? More opportunities for them to just critically think and figure things out on their own based on the story. Okay, so keep these suggestions in mind during the following activity as you choose a better response to the customer. Here we have a multiple choice question. This is a solve question. Now we've moved out of reflect into solve. You'll notice that all of these options are the same length. They all start with the same phrase. Um, it's dialogue. The options are dialogue because the question is, what would you say to the customer? And you notice also that the question is extremely short because we've got this picture over here of the story. And the story, we already know the situation. We've just seen the story. We don't really need to describe what's happening in the picture because we've already seen the story take place. So it's extremely efficient. And you'll also notice that there's a customer first job aid here. What? Pretty cool. So if they answer option A, they get meaningful feedback on why that is not the best response and an instruction to use the customer first job aid. Well, what's in that job aid? What? It's like a pretty version of the action list. So once you've got that action list, things are smooth sailing. So much hinges upon a well-constructed action list. Then they can go back, because people, on the job, it's called a job aid because it's like available to you on the job. So they should be able to consult that job aid on the job, and your training can give them practice using it. Then there is meaningful feedback for the correct answer as well. So again, and you would do some more solve and feedback questions until you'd covered all the conflicts within the story. So that's it, story, reflect, solve, and feedback. And you may notice that that's exactly what I did for this session today. We had some context at the beginning. I shared a story with you. It was Cindy's story. It had a relatable character and strong conflict. I asked you to reflect. I said, hey, how do you feel? Why do you feel that way? There's no right or wrong to that. It's just helping you to think back to the story and easing you into the next one, which is solving for Cindy. And then my feedback to you on your individual answers, as well as showing you kind of the process of instructional story design. I like to practice what I preach. All right. What kind of things are coming into your mind as you see this played out in an e-learning setting?
I'm reflecting on my own projects, and it really uh, looking at those actions, right? And then once those are identified, going back and creating the story where you can put those in. And I think there's definitely times I've done it in the reverse order, thinking like, oh, I'm making this relatable. So there's some things I'm just already starting to think about, like, oh, this is how I could do that and make it more interesting. Like we have our own version of Chat GPT. We call it SMUD GPT because the company I work for is called SMUD. And I've been starting to work on some videos for that and just thinking about like, oh, we've got the different models you can choose, but why, I don't know. So starting to think about the action so that I could go back and make it more relatable
Yeah.
and instructional in some ways too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the action is this substance of training. Yeah. Not knowledge. Knowledge is education. Training is action. Good. Well, I do want to give you a quick orientation to operating inside of the course. Um, Before I do that, Elizabeth and Janina, did either one of you want to say something about what you're thinking after seeing that example?
Yeah. I mean, I think for the projects I work on, our action is very well defined.
Nice.
And that's something that is almost handed to us. But I think the biggest paradigm shift for me today has been really more the audience. I
Mm,
often the corporate voice of change. And a lot of times I'm like interpreting this voice, but
mm,
I have to say, I think I have missed
mm,
really making it audience centric. And
mm.
so having that profile and
Nice.
being more, I don't, maybe sympathetic is the right word to my audience
Yeah,
is important as we use stories to enact change throughout our organization.
yeah, yeah. Well put. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Janina, anything on your mind?
So for me, it was really good to see that there is a structured process I can use because so far I'm coming more from the part of technical e-learning, so really having a lot of knowledge, and for a specific audience. But I think the point of including a story behind all that really makes it
Mhm,
a completely new, option for me to create training
mhm,
experiences. And that's why I also actually booked this course to learn
mhm.
it. So yes, it's a good way, good way to
Wonderful.
learn it. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so it is a process. And you'll notice that the process is very structured and it brings you to the point where once it comes time to create the story almost writes itself. And you'll be given a lot of worksheets that help you through that process. These worksheets are multi-purpose. First, to give you a new way of thinking about instructional design. As you complete them, you'll start to it kind of forces you into that audience first mindset. Some of these worksheets you will continue to use for the rest of your life. I do. Some of them you'll be like, you know what? I think I've got this one. It's embedded in my mind now. I'm doing it automatically. But for this course, do the worksheets, use your own brain. Please don't use ChatGPT to do this. The school is really committed to creating experts, not great prompters. You can use ChatGPT and all that stuff after you've taken this course to help you with brainstorming and such. But I really want you to use your own intelligence for this course. I am putting in the chat a PDF that has some quick tips, which are going to be covered as we go through the course itself, as I demonstrate some of the activities and such. Before I do that, though, I wanted to share my definition of humanized instruction. And you can screenshot this if you'd like. Humanized instruction means that I get to know who the learners are, respect learners as people, speak to them in their language, stories, allow them to discover instead of telling them information, and give them opportunities to practice. To me, that is a humanized learning experience. I'd like to review the activities in the prologue. Most of you have done them already, but don't skip things because we took the fluff out. There's nothing fluffy here. Everything is really vital and it builds on the next thing. A message from me here. Of course, you want to read that because it's for me. You can link in with me, go to my YouTube channel. Instructional story design is a mindset. This line here, this is going to feel familiar and it's going to be different at the same time. So it is instructional design, but it is a very story-centric way of doing instructional design. And because of that, don't cram. Space it. And I'm going to show you how you can space it so that you don't cram. You want to give your brain time to like soak it all in. You'll be practicing things. The e-learning itself will give you practice. Plus, you'll be doing assignments. 3 of those assignments you'll be turning in to me for me to give you feedback on, including the capstone project. There are moments of reflection throughout the experience. Here's one of them. This is P6. And so some of you have already responded here. All you have to do is scroll down to the bottom, click this plus sign, type your name and whatever you want to type there. These are just moments to stop, reflect on what you've learned, and share it with other people. I find this to be incredibly valuable for you and also for me, so I can keep my finger on the pulse of how you're feeling as you're going through this. You're going to be creating a course for the question mark grill. This course does not, you're not creating an assignment for your work. It's a fictitious company. You're always welcome to ping me in the discuss tab, which is right up here. And you can write messages to me, to one another. If you want other people to see your message, then you're going to have to mention them like I've done here to Jen. Then they will receive a notification in their email. Otherwise, you can just, if it's to me, you don't have to ping me. I'm going to get notified of it. And then you'll notice navigation. Every time you complete an activity, there'll be a check mark here beside it, so you can keep track of where you are. All right. The next activity is important. Download the notebook. And when you download the notebook, save it as with a unique name. Use Adobe to fill it out. It's got all these, you can put your name here. Your assignment is to read the first 5 pages of the notebook before you get started in chapter 1. How to use the notebook, the value of practice, certification, downloadable resources, read all that stuff. But the one that's going to keep you on track is page 5. Page 5. Everybody hold up 5 fingers. Page 5. This is your lifeline to this course. Schedule, put at the end of this week, like this is February the 3rd. So on February 10th, put complete week 1 by this date. You will notice that each chapter has an assignment. Here's one. Here's chapter 2's. And then for each week, just schedule, okay, I'm going to complete chapters 3 and 4. I'm going to complete chapters 5 and 6. You will notice at the end of chapter 6, this is the first time you submit an assignment for feedback. And then after week 4 will be our mid-course check-in. And then after week 6 will be our closing celebration. I would recommend for chapters 8 and 9 that you complete these during week 5. That'll give you the rest of week 6 to develop your course. Okay, you'll receive weekly reminders from the School of Story Design about what you've just done and what to look forward to in the next week. And if you start binging on the course, totally fine. It is kind of binge-worthy. I'd like to show you also that within this notebook, for every activity in the course, except for the bonus activities, there's a place to take notes. So this is a video. You can take notes of what you learned from that video in this section. This is an e-learning activity. Within the e-learning activity, there's going to be this chart that looks like this. You can fill it out in this notebook. You're going to be interviewing the subject matter expert, and you can type your notes in the notebook from your conversation with her. So almost every activity has a place where you can share note or take notes for yourself. So this is a really invaluable resource. P3 is mark your calendar. So yeah, use page 5 from your notebook to make those, mark your calendar. Thank you for completing the survey. Our simple rule of engagement is respecting one another, which you have done beautifully on this call and also online. This is the reflect and the share, and this. There'll be a video. These videos feature my animated self. I call them rants too. They are followed by, with the video is usually followed by learning. During the first, and you'll hear my voice in the e-learning. Originally, I had my wife doing it because she's a voiceover artist. You need to do this. I'm like, okay. But you can hide the menu here. You can hide this menu to make it full screen. And you will notice that we did not lock anything down. So you can advance through here at your own pace. You can scrub this. You can turn on closed captioning. It's really malleable. You guys are not only adults, but you're adults who do learning, and so we didn't lock anything down. But it'll make it very easy for you to come back after you've gone through it initially to review anything that you want to. After the e-learning, you'll usually have a worksheet that you're going to download. And that'll be your assignment. And some of these chapters have some special activities as well. Do you have any questions about how to navigate in the course? All right, I'm going to do one quick round robin then and ask you, how do you feel about starting your journey through instructional story design? And I'm going to start with, I don't know, Jen. Jen, how do you feel?
I'm really excited to get into this and start applying it or thinking about how to apply it to my actual work.
Awesome. I'm excited too. Janina, how do you feel?
So I'm really happy that I booked this course, and I need to mention it, I feel personally addressed.
Oh,
So
you warmed my
well
heart.
done.
Thank you so much. Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Kelly, what about you? How are you feeling? Oh, why is your audio not working now? We're going to come back to you. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I am excited. I wasn't sure what to expect. I'm a kind of a late add to it, so I haven't had a chance to look through the materials yet,
Mhm.
but I'm looking forward to see how this changes the way I structure change.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes, I'm very much looking to hear your insights as you apply this to change management. Kelly, try again.
Can you hear me? Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Jen. All right. I'm excited, super excited. Can't wait. Yeah, that's simply put.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for all of you. You are going to be challenged in this course. You're going to be challenged to think in a new way. The assignments are designed to really help you critically think about things and solve problems, even in the e-learning. I'm excited to hear what you think about the e-learning portions. My designer, Deanna Fisher, is amazing. I would often ask her, "Hey, do you think that we could do this?" And she's like, "Well, I've never done that in articulate storyline before, but I'm gonna give it a shot." She's amazing. I think that you will enjoy her e-learnings a lot, and I hope you enjoy the videos and all of the support materials as well. And hopefully, we designed this in a way that would inspire instructional designers to be like, I want my videos to be like that, or I want my e-learning to function like that. That it'll give you some ideas as a designer and how to structure your own training. So I hope you find that to be true. Have a wonderful time going through the course. I cannot wait to see you at the mid-course check-in. By that time, I will have given you some feedback on two assignments, um, and that'll set you up for the capstone project. All right, guys, if you have any questions throughout, ping me in the discuss tab. You can also email me. You have my email address, and we will see one another very soon. Bye.
Thanks. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.